up, soul family? Welcome to episode 16 of the Art of Life podcast. I appreciate you guys rocking and rolling with me, and this week we are talking about building confidence, a topic that's so important to me. A lot of people look at me as being someone who's very confident, and that is something I built over years. If you met me as a kid, you wouldn't recognize me. I was overweight, I was scared of the world, I was bullied. I remember I used to look at my feet. I remember not being able to interact with the world because I had such little confidence. Like, I vividly remember walking home from my bus, and a kid from another school was like, hey, like trying to talk to me, and I just like ignored them because I was so worried about being picked on. And to be the person I am today, where everything I do is high risk, everything I do is from a place, someone who has immense confidence, and how I did that. Also, I want to note that I did a live podcast with one of my really good friends, Hamoni, on Twitch. By the time this recording comes out, it will be done already. We are going to be releasing a recording of that podcast on all the platforms where this is available. If you guys are coming from there, I appreciate you guys. Welcome to the family. So let's get into why it's important to build confidence. Why is it important to be confident? Right, and I've touched on this in prior episodes, but confidence it'll affect every other aspect of your life. It's going to affect your decision making. It's going to affect like the risk you're willing to take, and it's going to affect your resilience. How is that? Well, the decisions I take in my life tend to be pretty high risk, and I'm able to justify them to myself and move forward, even though I'm scared, because I believe and I've built this confidence in myself that I'm going to be okay. That whatever challenges will come along the way, that I am equipped to handle them. And right, decision making, risk taking, and it's true with like resilience. Going into something, if you believe you can do it, you will already have an advantage than believing you can't. Does that make sense? And trying to build confidence and understanding that there's an important balance, right, between being realistic and confident. And that healthy balance, only we can judge ourselves. Because what's cocky and what's confident, what's arrogant and what's proud is very subjective. There are some really successful people that are very confident that will come across as arrogant, and you ask their friends and they're confident, you ask people that don't like them and they're cocky. What you build confidence with is by showing up and attempting things and being successful. That is how you create confidence, right? And what are the pros of being confident? Something we talk about a lot in the fight game is you have to almost be delusional. Like, it's talked more in MMA, in my experience, but we talk about it when we go into combat or we go into competition, that like, you never want to go into a fight scared. You want to be delusional about the fact that you're going to run through this opponent, because when you go through scared, you hesitate. And there's that famous quote from Point Break, right? Hesitation causes stagnation, stagnation causes death. Like, you can't hesitate. Fear causes hesitation, hesitation causes stagnation, stagnation causes death. And so there's a big benefit to your quality of life when you can build that confidence. And most people that are very happy in their lives are also very confident. I can't think of an example in my life of someone who's truly really happy and who doesn't have that confidence, doesn't exude that confidence, that self-assurance that they are good, that they are worthy, that they are capable. Right? Now, there's a trap here, because everything, like we talk about in this podcast, is a double-edged blade. But when you're overly confident, and this is like one of my big pet peeves, I like really hate the word triggered, but it's a good word. When something brings up an emotion in us, it's an idea of being triggered. It's not a good or bad thing. I think it's used in a weird context nowadays. But I get really triggered when people speak with so much certainty. And I do that too. It's, again, the human condition of being a hypocrite. But when you speak with such certainty, you are able to miss out on things. So if you want to go fast and you don't want to question yourself, be arrogant isn't bad, right? There's lots of examples of arrogant people that have been very successful towards achieving their goals. But the point, when you're uncertain, you can see things for what they are. That like a little bit of realism to slow down and think, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I miscalculated. And that's like somewhere where I am at in my life. I take a lot of times where like, there's so many things I was so certain about in my life, and specifically in the last years, I realized I was certain about these things because I was told not through my experience. It was just like programmed into me. And a conversation I have all the time is about religion. Like, most of us who are religious in today's day and age in Western society will subscribe to a religion where we have not read the book from which our religion falls from. So like, where did you get that belief from? It was told to you, and you took whoever told it to you as like, oh, they're right. That makes sense to me. And I think religion is very powerful. We've talked about this in the podcast before, but that's a point of almost like, is that arrogant? Is that like conceited? Maybe conceit is not the right word. But the point is, it's important to have a healthy balance, right? If you are arrogant to the point of like, well, when you need to be like you're fighting, but there's blind spots. There's blind spots when you're so certain of yourself, it's impossible that you're right about everything you believe. There's just no one on earth. And so when you're aware of that, you can be confident and also realistic. But that realism slows you down because you question things. You're more careful. When you're overly confident, you don't get to explore those blind spots. You tend to dismiss feedback. And there's like a famous phenomenon I was talked a lot about throughout like the 2020, 2021, 2022 is the Dunning-Kruger effect. But it was always talked about, and I looked into it because I was always curious, where people were interviewing people in the streets who were like really passionate about something and disproving their beliefs very quickly with a few questions. But the Dunning-Kruger effect is just a lack of awareness. And it's very simple. It can be negative or positive. So the general consensus of what I believe people think the Dunning-Kruger effect is that the dumbest person in the room thinks they're the smartest. But the Dunning-Kruger effect is just a lack of self-assessment. So if you want to test someone along this effect, and we all fall for it, you ask someone about their capabilities, and then you give them an objective performance to prove themselves. Like the famous thing, oh, I see red and I'll fight, I'll kick anyone's ass. Because their self-assessment is that they're good. And then you put them in an objective performance where they have to compete in a combat sport, where we realize everyone who competes in martial arts, who just like participates in martial arts, realizes really fast how helpless we are. And so building confidence and humility is so important. I'm jumping all over the place as usual. I appreciate you guys for staying in because the information is so valuable. I've been really in this Alex Hormozi hole lately, reading his books, listening to his books. I have these long commutes because I am an entrepreneur. At this point in my life, everything I do, I am my own boss. I work for myself. I have a lot of different streams of income. And by no means am I super rich or am I making a lot of money right now, but I'm building something. But one of the things he said in one of his books that I loved so much is it's not about being smarter, it's about being more persistent. That there are people that are just born geniuses, but no one is born with like iron guts. No one is born with persistence. That is earned. That is forged through life and experience. And that is where we build our confidence. It is forged through life. The same way we build a muscle, the same way we learn to talk, we learn to walk. You reoccurringly prove that you are capable to yourself, and that is where the confidence comes. And what's the opposite of confidence? It's being self-conscious. It's lack of confidence, being self-conscious. Your consciousness is with yourself, and we've talked about this in the podcast. If I bring my awareness, my consciousness to self, like, oh, I'm self-conscious about my body, or I'm self-conscious about this mole or this piece of acne, then I miss my consciousness's ability to see the whole world. So when you understand the cost of your lack of confidence is the life that you want, that's when you can start building yourself. Because I've been a personal trainer for over 10 years now. And the thing is, people will come to work with me when the pain of transformation is less than the pain of staying the same. And the pain of staying the same is always the same. It's just you become aware of it. You become aware of, like, one day you're going up a flight of stairs and you're out of breath. And one day your knees hurt when you're trying to play with your kid and you go, or one day you get blood tests back or something happens, you go, whoa, it's painful to stay this. I'm going to face the pain of transformation. And the reality is we're always drawing out the length of time we're willing to transform. So how did I build my confidence? I'm going to tell you right now some of the best tips to do so. And number one is stop fucking comparing yourself to other people. Okay? Because we compare ourselves on our thoughts, feelings. I am always aware of everything going on with me. As far as like what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm contemplating. All I see from other people is what they allow me to see. Especially in a day and age where I can look at someone's life who I don't know, I've never met, and I just look at what they're doing and I think, wow, they're doing so much better than me. You are comparing your worst self, because you're judging yourself on your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, your lowest vibration of self, not who shows up in the world, versus someone's best self, who they're portraying the best version of themselves. So you're going to feel really bad about yourself, and that's going to crush your confidence. When you truly understand that and you stop comparing yourself to other people, that is huge as far as building your confidence. The next thing that's really big that I learned way later in life, and this is like anyone who's being bullied, is an inability to set boundaries. And where does that come from? To set boundaries, you have to believe you are something of value. And there's an analogy, I saw it on TikTok, I saw it on Instagram. I wish I could find the creator that did it, because he posts stuff all the time. If I find it before the episode post, I'll make sure to put it in the show notes. But he had this beautiful analogy where he talks about, imagine you own land, but you own barren land. You own barren land that has nothing. It's just a desert. So you're trying to make this land thrive. What do? Well, you build roads, right? You build infrastructure. You want people to come into your barren land to make a bustling city. Now, if you own agricultural land and you have a farm and you have cattle and pigs and you have wheat and you have mills and silos full of grain, you don't build streets into your property. You build fences. You build boundaries. You cannot set boundaries as an individual unless you have the confidence and self-awareness to see the value you bring in this world. And so setting small boundaries in your life will inherently build your confidence. Just those two things. Just stop comparing yourself to other people, because we have no fucking idea what they're going through, and set boundaries with people of things like, hey, I didn't like that. Hey, when you said that, and like, why do we not do that? What are we scared of? Like, sometimes you have to sit and be like, hey, I feel this way. What am I really scared of? To be like, it's literally no different from when we were kids and we look like there's monsters under my bed. What am I really scared of happening? Is this person going to get mad at me? Who cares? I set a boundary. I didn't like that you did that. You said that. You did something and you're not wrong for it. I'm informing you that it had this impact on me. And if you want me in your life, I will not do that. And whatever anyone says, boundaries are ultimatums, always. And ultimatums have this like negative connotation. But like, if someone's going to keep stabbing me, like think, like this is all very ambiguous. But imagine it was like a physical thing. Like every time someone sees me, they stab me a little bit. They're like, bro, stop. I'm not going to see you anymore if you're going to stab me. Well, that's true with like just things that we just don't take as serious as physical confrontation. And for me personally, like most physical pain is way less significant than emotional pain. I am so sensitive, hence the sensitive sensei. But because of our societal norms, we will credit physicality way worse than words, knowledge, emotion. You know what I'm getting at. Now, the next thing to build your confidence is self-care. And this is a hot take. I don't know if it's a hot take. I feel like it shouldn't be a hot take, but it is a hot take. Because self-care has been so romanticized to be like, self-care, I'm going to eat this cake and take a bath. I think like it was well-meaning, but what self-care really is got lost in that. So to get into what self-care really is, we need to define what the self is. And to me, the self is broken up into three things: the body, the mind, and the spirit, or the soul, whatever you want to look at it. How do I take care of my body? It's not going to binge on food. I'm sorry, like that can have a place. You can create an experience, and that can be good for your spirit or your mind, right? But if you look at an experience of like, I'm going to go consume alcohol or consume a drug or consume a meal that I know is not good for me, your experience isn't going to be good unless you're sharing that with someone you care about or people you care about in a community. And so it's less about the food. It's more about the indulgence and the environment of love. So how do we actually take care of our body? Fucking good nutrition, things that I know are good for me. Sleep, which is, I'm not the best at it. I'm working my ass off though. The irony of trying to relax, working my ass off. I'm working really hard on maximizing my sleep hygiene. And exercise. There's times where I don't want to train. There's times I don't want to go to the gym. I never regret it. I've never met anyone that regrets it. Unless you go way too hard, like you will always feel better after it. Right? Versus if I go and eat quote unquote shitty meal, I'm not going to feel good after. If I go exercise, even if you like a 30-minute thing, a little circuit on YouTube, you accomplish something which is going to build your confidence because you kept an agreement to yourself. And you're going to be high on those endorphins and feel good. Now let's talk about the mind. Because the three parts of self. How do you take care of your mind? First and foremost, feel your shit. This has been the theme of when I started this podcast. Emotions are transient things that possess us that the only way to get rid of are to feel. And it sucks. And all humans have to feel. It's just the reality. When you feel an emotion, it's so, like, if we get into anagrams, there's a whole other thing. I'm Anagram 7. Like, my whole thing is about not feeling pain and not feeling discomfort, not feeling emotional pain, but learning to sit with things and just be like, you got to remember, your nervous system and brain are wired to keep you safe. When you feel an emotion, what is it telling you? Because in some way, hunger is an emotion. In some way, thirst is an emotion. If you're feeling angry, you should like approach it with curiosity. And this is like a new thing for me that's like really helped my life. That like when I feel quote unquote triggered, when I feel an emotion rise up, I go into my body and be like, what does this feel like? Right? Like, what does it feel like? Can I describe it to you? Oh, I can feel it come up in my chest. I can feel that anxiety, or I can feel the sadness in my forehead. Wherever you're feeling it, identify the feeling and approach it with a curiosity of, what is this telling me? And then feel it, and it's crazy because it just goes away. A lot of the time, it just goes away. Instead of just like, what happens when you like, what I would do is avoid it and just be busy and train it out or whatever and just push it down. And then it's just like always there. Next, socialize and be around people you love. We are social creatures. One of the most cruel punishments we can do to people is solitary confinement. Why? Because being around people you love changes your literal physiology. It is good for you. Find people you love, spend time with them. Setting boundaries, we touched on that one. I'm not going to go any further, but that's really good for your mind. And that is self-care. And just do things you like. Hey, you like to bike? Go bike. You like to read? Go read. You like to work out? Go work out. I remember I did traditional Chinese medicine multiple times in my life, but more as maintenance later. And one of my practitioners, Katrina was her name, she was awesome. She do acupuncture, and she's like, you need to do something in your life that's not physical that you like doing. And she goes, it doesn't have to be something big. She's like, one of my patients, they like to pick their face, and they know it's not necessarily good for them, but they spend half an hour a week, and they'll go with their mirror, and they'll pick their face, and they feel great after, and that's enough to satisfy them. And doing things you like is self-care. How do you take care of your spiritual self? Now, that's a really interesting one. And I've talked about it before in the podcast, but if you're new to the podcast, believe in something. I don't care if it's astrology, Chinese astrology, tarot, Jesus, God, Allah, Buddha, whatever. The amount of comfort that comes from faith is crazy, whether it is real or not. Because the reality is most people on the planet are wrong, because there's most of us that are one religion. But the quality of life that you get from believing in something, and when you believe you're divinely protected or divinely taken care of or acting to a code, and putting that off of your chest and onto God, Buddha, Allah, the spirit, the universe, you can literally feel the weight come off, right? When people are going through addiction, it is a part of the A-Step program is to find faith. Why? Because to overcome incredible things, you have to have a support system, and there's nothing more supportive than our own belief, our own faith. That is the greatest support we will have in this world. And I understand that's hard. I wouldn't identify as an atheist at all anymore, but for a long part of my life, I was an atheist. And the truth is, all our beliefs serve us, right? Being an atheist made me feel superior to people as far as my intellect. And the same arguments I made at the beginning of this podcast where I was like, hey, you trust that religion, but you haven't read that book. You like all these negative things allowed me to feel superior and intelligent, and that was its benefit. But the cost of being that was so significant. And I've just seen too many things, and I've seen too much value from having some sort of faith that I now think this podcast is about what I needed when I was young and what I think people need to hear. This podcast is going to be about biohacking, improving your quality of life, inspiring and empowering you. Finding something you can believe in is one of the greatest things you can do for your confidence, for your overall happiness, and just making your life so much better. We touched on a lot, but understand how important confidence is. Understanding that everything you want for your life is on the ticket. There is the confidence to do the things you need to transform the life into what you want. And with that, as always, we are signing off with a quote. Today it's a Woody Allen quote, and it's 80% of life is just showing up. I love this quote because it didn't make sense to me at first. But if you look at the opportunities that have showed up in my life, they have been a byproduct of showing up. Showing up, having a good reputation and a good character have given me most of my opportunities that I've been able to capitalize on. And so just show up. Show up to the gym. Show up to the birthday party you don't want to go to. Show up, and life has a way of taking care of itself. But life can't happen to you if you're not there. So with that, I'm signing off. I love you all very, very much. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment what you liked, what you didn't like, give me feedback, things you want me to talk about in the podcast. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, wherever you're listening to this, please rate the show 5 stars. It helps me get shown, it helps me get sponsors, it helps me keep this content free, helps me get the equipment to be better, helps me get the podcast edited. It truly, truly means the world. And last but not least, people that are always asking me, they want to support me. If you got value from this, or you know someone that would find value from this, someone that lacks a little bit of confidence in their life, send them it. Put it on your story on Instagram. I love that shit. That warms my heart. Like when people buy my merch, or like just share my things, or follow my podcast page, I appreciate that so, so much. It makes me feel so loved, and it allows me to keep doing my goal in life, which is to inspire and empower people to live lives they love. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next week. Stay tuned because I'm dropping maybe 2 episodes next week. It might take 2 weeks, but I'm going to get a recording of that live podcast with my homie Hamuni, and we're going to be dropping it. Cheers.